Good evening, and thank you for allowing me this opportunity to present this topic to you. My name is Eric Pratt. I'm the Airport General Manager at Mesquite Metro Airport. And in tonight's presentation, I'm going to talk about the current status of the airport, go over some of the construction projects that we have going on, as well as some of the things that you should see in the short future, as far as over the next 5 years. And then also briefly talk about the fee proposal, which is on the agenda item tonight for your consideration. Starting off, looking at the airport, Mesquite Metro Airport is a general aviation reliever airport in the DFW area, which is focused on attracting corporate aircraft. Mesquite Metro is an economic driver for the community. In a 2011 study, which was released by TxDOT Aviation, it showed that the airport had an impact to the local economy of roughly $8.3 million. Now, one thing that I like to point out whenever I talk about this fact is that these numbers, in my opinion, are actually low all across the state. And the reason that I say that is the study was released in 2011, but the data that they used came from 2008, 2009, and 2010. And as we all saw with the economy and during that time, everybody's numbers were extremely low. And so I do anticipate that our actual impact to the local community being much higher. The good news with that is TxDOT is in the process right now of updating this study, and we anticipate those results being released sometime over this next year. Currently, the taxable value is about $16.25 million and growing. And really, the airport is the front door to our community in regards to business executives and decision makers who are coming in. We are the first impression that they have of Mesquite, as well as the last impression on their way out. And so we always want to make sure that we provide the proper services, treat them well, so that way we start them off on the right foot and then send them off excited about the opportunities that they have here in the community. Currently, there are 216 aircraft based at the airport. That's broken down to seven jet aircraft, 24 multi-engine planes, 183 single-engine planes, as well as 2 helicopters. The airport is comprised of 448 acres and allows all-weather access to the community. And this is one of the key things that the airport is going to bring, is it's going to be your first point of entry into the community if something ever happens. A great example of this is down in Galveston after the hurricanes. Whenever the island was actually cut off from the mainland, as soon as they got that airport open, they are now able to bring in supplies, goods, and personnel to help with the recovery effort. And actually, over a 2-month period, that had several 100,000 tons of goods that were actually brought into that airport in order to help out with those efforts. And so for us, we would easily be the fastest method for anybody across the country to get into the community if need be, which is an important aspect. We are a busy airport. In fiscal year 17, we had 65,000 operations. And actually, our numbers were finalized today, and we were right above that 65,000 mark again for fiscal year 2018. A look at some of the current projects that we have going on. The first one is an airport improvement project, which it's a $2.8 million project, which is primarily being funded by the federal government. It is a 90-10 project, meaning that the FAA is pitching in 90% of the funds, while the city of Mesquite is only responsible for the 10%. And in this case, for $280,000, we are actually receiving $2.8 million worth of repairs and assets to the airport, which is an incredible deal for us. This project involves us replacing the runway and taxiway edge lights, as well as the signs, replacing the runway and taxiway asphalt shoulders, redefining some of the drainage channels that we have at the airport, as well as repairing an apron in front of one of our corporate facilities and an extension to our current runway. We also participate in the TxDOT Aviation Routine Airport Maintenance Program, referred to as the RAMP grant, which it's a $50,000 matching program where we're able to actually receive $50,000 in return for $100,000 worth of work. This upcoming year, we were planning on using these funds in order to replace the concrete seals on our main apron area, as well as start a herbicide program inside of our runway safety area.
Eric, before you move on, just because we're being recorded and videoed and people see this later, go back up right there where it says extension of the runway, and that kind of talk about, because people will say, oh my goodness, you're extending the runway. Well, why are you doing that?
So right now our runway is 5,999 feet in length, and we are actually adding 1 foot to the end of the runway. And the reason why is there's a lot of scheduling programs out there where pilots from all across the country can say, hey, we're flying into the Dallas area and we need a runway that is such a length.
6,000 feet.
6,000 feet. None of them are putting in 5,999. They all want that 6,000. And so with us adding that 1 foot, it'll get us on the radar and allow them to actually consider Mesquite as an option whenever they're coming into the area.
Thank you.
One of the other projects that we have going on is we are working with the airport's engineer of record, who is H.W. Lochner, in order to evaluate the land that we have around the airport in order to make sure that we're developing in a manner in which we know the community is going to need in the future, as well as maximizing that potential growth. With that, and looking at the planning aspect, we wanted to make sure that we continued to grow the taxable value of the airport. And in order to do this, we knew that we had to attract corporate or business aircraft. Now, anytime that these planes come into the airport and base with us in Mesquite, their aircraft goes on the taxable or the tax record just as any business asset would. And so for that, we wanted to make sure that we were targeting these planes by attending trade shows in the future, as well as marketing towards specific individuals to hopefully bring them into the community. Also, we know that we need to develop hangars in order to house these planes and really offer the amenities that they need. And this is a key thing for us, as right now in the DFW area with all the growth that's occurring, every airport out there is completely full, which means that there's a waiting list at almost every airport. We currently have about 160 planes that have called inquiring about hangars over the last few years. And having that space available is going to allow us to actually bring those aircraft in and just continue to grow. Some of the examples in the local area, you have Addison Airport, which is actually in the process of redeveloping a 16-acre site, where in that process they actually had to tear out about 70 old hangars and relocate some of those planes in order to come back in and build larger box facilities to hopefully, again, attract those corporate planes. You also have Love Field, which is in the process right now of transitioning from being a commercial airport with a general aviation side to just focusing on that commercial aspect. And so with that, you have about 240 aircraft that are based at that airport who over the next several years are going to be in the market for looking for space. And so just making sure that we're set up and able to offer, whether it's pad sites or hangars, is going to be key to the growth of the taxable value of the airport into the future. We also wanted to make sure that we were able to maintain the existing infrastructure that we had by properly planning our funds into the future, as well as looking at the drainage channels is one thing that I talk about in another slide as well, making sure that we have those set up properly so that way we can utilize some of the land that we have available. Looking at the future of the airport, we are in the process of finalizing 2 ground leases right now with 2 different organizations. Whenever those are completed, we'll be building roughly 29,000 square feet of hangar space. That's going to be utilized for an avionics shop as well as hangar storage, and so offering it up to other individuals who want to come in. And then we have 2 projects that we're looking at presenting to TxDOT Aviation in order to request federal funds. One is an airport master plan, which the current plan that we have in place was completed in 2004. It's lived its useful life. It's one of those plans that you have to update at least every 20 years, which in this case, with the economy changing, with the airport changing, we decided that it's just time for us to go ahead and start that process, as well as the repair to the drainage system that we have specifically looking at the southern part of the airport where we have about 85 acres that's available for us to develop. But right now, with the drainage channels, the way that they're set up, we really cannot develop that land until we address that issue. And both of those would be eligible for 90% funding through the FAA. And now the proposal that you have on the agenda meeting tonight for the airport fees.
Which is item 6 on the consent agenda, if any of you want to look at that. Thanks.
This is kind of a shift in management style. And what I mean by this is prior to tonight, these fees have never been presented to council as far as something that is going into the city code. And so in my efforts is to make the airport a little more transparent and make sure that everybody's aware of how these fees are being assessed on our users, I felt it was appropriate to go ahead and add it to the airport section of the city code. The first one goes over landing fees. It's section 52. And in this, we felt like it was appropriate to go ahead and state that we are not charging fees to individuals who are using the runway. Anybody's able to come in and use the runway as many times as they want, and there is not a fee that's going to be associated with those operations. Section 53 is your miscellaneous fees, and here, anytime that we offer a service to an aircraft or an individual, if there's a fee associated with it, we felt, again, it was appropriate to go ahead and just have that displayed publicly. The one section that we feel is going to provide the largest impact to the airport is the facility fees. And this is a very common fee in the aviation industry, where if an aircraft actually comes in and uses the terminal, there's typically a fee associated with that. And it's based upon the size of the aircraft as well as how many days that they're with us. And then there also is an incentive in there for the individual to purchase fuel. If somebody, based upon the size again, purchases the minimum amount of fuel, we will go ahead and waive that first day that they're in the terminal in order to help them out. Section 54 deals with applying to be
Can I
a
ask a
commercial
question?
aeronautical.
I got a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, sir.
These fees, are these in line with the other airports that we have now? I mean, have we looked at the other airports, see what they're charging compared to what we're charging?
Yes, sir, and I apologize for not mentioning that before, but as we were preparing these fees, we did look at other municipally run fixed-based operators, which that's where your fees are coming in for the airport, which the examples that we used were McKinney National Airport, we had Sugar Land Airport, Victoria, as well as New Braunfels.
All right, thank you.
So the application to perform a commercial aeronautical activity, we're saying that this should be a standard fee at $150 in order to account for staff's time for reviewing the application as well as vetting the company to make sure that it's appropriate for the airfield. Section 55 generally touches on leases and specifically goes over your tie-down leases as well as overnight hangar rates, now that we have some facilities that we have some flexibility with. And then you have section number 56, which establishes the margin that we would charge for our fuel, both for 100 low lead as well as Jet A, and then also the markup that we would have on aircraft oil, which we sell to our users. And before this meeting, I pulled up a chart that basically showed me all the fuel prices within a 30-mile radius of Mesquite. And with that, we were actually, with these fees in place, or this model in place, we were actually 17 cents per gallon below the market for Jet A fuel, as well as 30% below the market for 100 low lead, which I feel is appropriate for where we are located based upon the fact that you also have Love Field, you have Addison, who tend to charge a much higher price for fuel than everybody else just because of their proximity to downtown Dallas.
Another question.
Yes, sir.
Is it typical for municipally run airports to set an annual fuel price versus, for example, quarterly or market-based?
So what we are setting is actually the markup. And so the cost for us changes on a weekly basis but that market or that profit that we're going to make per gallon is going to stay the same throughout the year.
That's the additional charge. You have the market rate, and then this is the rider above that market rate.
So what we have is our cost plus our margins. And with that, looking at the market, we're still below the average.
No, I got it. I'm just trying to understand the mechanism. You know, if the market is at $2, then you have an additional set markup that is always per whatever unit you sell to the aircraft, regardless of what the market is. $2, $1.90, $2.15, right?
Yes, we always have that market that we're going to make a certain number, which in this case it's $2.35 for every gallon that we pump.
Got
and
it.
that's on your jet fuel.
Got it.
And at this point, I'd like to open it up for any questions.
So I've mentioned several times, he's gone over item 6 on our consent agenda, which is predominantly the airport rates and fees and things that tonight. So if we have any questions on those rates and fees, now would be the time, or just any general questions. Councilman O'Shea.
Thank you. So in terms of these rates and fees, if they had been in place at the levels at which you're proposing to put them for the next fiscal year, had they been in place for last fiscal year, what would the impact have been to our bottom line at the airport?
So a lot of these fees were in place already. They had just never been brought before council. And the one that I had pointed out as far as the facility fee, I think is the one where you're going to see the greatest impact. And that one I had anticipated us selling about an extra 50,000 gallons throughout the year had that fee actually been in place. There are some other ones on there that right now it's just we've never charged for this service in the past, and so coming up with an actual number for what that effect is going to be on our actual budget is very difficult at this point.
Okay. So going back to the 50,000 gallon difference, we would have sold an additional 50,000 gallons. What would that translate into in terms of money?
So if they were charged our published rate, it'd be about 100,000 gallons, or about about $130,000. But a lot of these aircraft also come in on discounted rates, whether it's through some flying organization that they pay into or one of the other discounts that we offer. But we're still looking at a good markup of probably about $75,000 to $130,000 extra.
Okay. And then going to the rates, the second point that you made was that the rates that you're going to, some of the rates that you're adopting are services that never had a rate associated with them, correct?
Yes, sir.
But they were rates that we were actually, or they were services that we were actually providing.
Yes, sir.
And we don't have any records to indicate how many times we provided those services for which we're now proposing rates.
In my time that I've been here, I have changed several things as far as starting to offer some of these amenities. And so at this point, not every user knows that we offer these items, and so they are very rarely requested.
Okay. I better understand that now. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Mayor Pro Tem?
I was curious, you said that all the airports are at maximum, they're full.
Yes, sir.
I guess McKinney and Love Field and the Redbird and all these different. And what does that do to our marketing as far as the outreach of how far we can go where folks are out there in different directions that would be able to use our airport effectively?
So what we're looking at doing in this next fiscal year is we're actually in the process of purchasing a tracking program that will allow us to actually pull up aircraft by size, by type, time of year that they fly into the area, and we'll be able to select airports and basically have an entire database that will allow us to reach out to these departments and either entice them to hopefully come and base their aircraft at our airport, maybe build a hangar at our airport, or if they're just visiting the area to hopefully come in and utilize our services instead of paying what tends to be a higher price by going into Love Field or Addison at this point.
And we're in a prime position to be able to do that in comparison to the other airports that are already filled in, correct?
We absolutely are, and the great thing is we do have land that's available. A lot of the airports, as you get closer to the downtown Dallas area, they're completely landlocked at this point. And so the good thing for us is we do have that opportunity and that potential to continue to grow and meet the market as it continues to grow with the Dallas area.
Great, okay. And adding that 1 foot to the runway all of a sudden puts us on the projection in front of a lot of folks.
It now shows us up whenever they use these programs as being an option whenever they're flying into the area.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem, I always wondered what difference it made. This is a federal airport now with the tower and stuff. We can't say we're a 6,000 length runway. Legally, we have to say we're a 5,999 foot runway. And that's the difference. I used to talk to Cynthia about that, so I'm glad you mentioned that.
No, thank you for bringing it up, sir.
Councilman Archer. Oh, Dan will help you.
Thank you, Mayor. I was just curious. It seemed like I remember when we were doing the grand opening or the breaking ground for Ashley. I think those folks, I believe, had used our airport. Do we have any other corporate folks or just local business owners that use that airport on a regular basis? I was just kind of curious.
We do have quite a few. I know a few weeks ago Walmart was coming in quite a bit as they had that big announcement that took place here in town. We do have Discount Tire that seems to come in at least once a year as they offer promotions and incentives for their employees who are local. And then we do have several others as well. A lot of them do not want to be known as far as coming into areas
Sure.
just because they have that privacy with their aircraft. But I can definitely start talking to them and hopefully provide a list this time next year of who all has actually come through.
That's good. Okay, thank you.
And some of the ones that are around here that aren't necessarily in Mesquite, I'm aware of, that also are based out there, and you're exactly right. They don't really want for us to talk about it. I know of 3 that one's in Mesquite and 2 are in surrounding cities. Councilman O'Shea.
Thank you. So, Mr. Cahaley, during the budget retreat, we had talked about making sure that we were looking at the budget and looking at all the fees that we charge for the various services that the city offers. And I'm curious if this schedule was adopted with that in mind, or is this schedule adopted independent of that? And because it sounded like from the presentation that the fees that we're going forward with for the next fiscal year are the same fees that we had last year.
I think
With the addition, I guess, of the different services that normally didn't have a fee but now have a fee.
right. Mr. Pratt brought us kind of a operational model that's different, and we wanted to make sure we had those fees codified like we do with most other fees that the city charges. So that's the purpose in adding these. And as activity grows at the airport, we'll be able to measure how much the fees or these services are being used, and we can begin to adjust the increase or make sure that we're competitive in the market. So I don't think we tried to implement fees on where the things that we were not charging fees for and on a, compared to other airports, but the things that you're seeing tonight, and most of them, and Eric helped me make sure that I'm right, are things that we're already charging. You just have not approved those in the past.
And so the fee going forward is the same rate at which we were charging that?
For the most part, yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions? Oh, yeah, one more. Councilman Burrows.
So looking at our diagram of our airport, and you're saying that all these other airports are full, is there any long-term that we might try to look at, that we should be looking possibly at buying are purchasing more land to make our airport larger than it already is? Or do you see that happening, are we pretty much landlocked around there where we can't make it any larger?
I know that that's something that we have that I've discussed with city staff, and we do see that there is an opportunity out on the east side of the airport. But you also have the proposed extension of George Bush that's going through that area. And so part of our planning project was to really look at that area and see what we could actually do. So that way, if we do approach the individuals about purchasing that area, we know exactly what we're going to be able to actually accomplish on that east side. As far as the west side, we really own all the acreage that we can develop. And so land purchases going forward have to be over on that side of the airport.
Okay, thank you.
Good comment. Anything else? Thank you, Mr. Pratt.
Thank you.
Good presentation.